So, not been much going on recently, apologies for that, but got a little job to do today. So today we're going to talk about bolts, we're going to talk about self-tapping screws, we're going to talk about rivets, and we're going to talk about rivnuts. What we've got a little bit of a problem on Bertie. You can see his tailgate's up there, and when we went camping recently, we discovered that lifting the tailgate up resulted in the tailgate panel dropping off, despite the fact that I'd securely screwed it on. Clearly not that securely. So I have taken out self-tappers from our beautifully trimmed panel, thanks Matt, and we're going to need to use something else. So without further ado, let's talk about the options. So what we had on initially were some self-tapping screws. There was something about this big. They were pretty poor, to be honest, in that they were more likely to actually take the thread off the screw than they were to screw into the metal. Self-tapping screws are perfectly acceptable, however they're more prone to rust. Every time you kind of screw it or unscrew it, it frees up new metal. The whole point of it is it screws in, it creates this thread. Nobody ever paints their threads, nobody paints threads, nor would you, because they just get wiped every time you opened it up. So self-tappers, good, quick fixing if they work. These are rubbish. I can't remember where I bought them from, doesn't matter. They were cheap, so beware the cheap self-tapping screws. So the next option then is rivets, and as you saw on the previous video where we're doing the bunks, we tried to use a rivet. Rivets are great, nothing wrong with rivets, pretty permanent fixing. They're made out of, as far as I can tell, sort of stainless-ish steel and aluminium, so they don't tend to corrode. They don't tend to run rust down the side of your panel if you're doing that. So pretty good. So there's your, everybody knows pretty much, presumably, what a rivet gun looks like. You stick the rivet in the end of it in the hole, and you cramp it down, and it crimps a rivet until this section of it here is unable to go any further, and then this shaft breaks off and it leaves you with the end of the rivet, which is all crumpled up behind it so that it fits in the panel. Sorry for the focus. And then great. The problem I have is that I don't have rivets in lots of different sizes. I have one set of rivets, which is what I bought from Halfords a while back. And so they're great if they fit, and they're not if they don't. Plus they are not, they're not the prettiest. You see it's dropping it on the floor. They're not the prettiest of things. Once they're in, you don't see this kind of bulbous bit at the back, but you do see a bit there, and you end up with this shaft broken off, which doesn't necessarily look the best. Anyway, so the option I've chosen to go for today, not necessarily the best option for all fixings, but the option I've chosen to go for today is something called a rivnut. And what is a rivnut? Well, a rivnut is kind of two pieces really. It's kind of a half and half. It's a way of getting bolts into metal panels like a self-tapping screw, but instead of the screw threading its way in, cutting its own thread, you have a rivet which has a thread within it. I don't know if you can see that. Let's pick up one of the bigger ones, you'll be able to see easier. There's a big old one there. You can see the thread inside this thing, and that's what the bolt bolts into. But like a rivet, you drill a hole, you put it in, you use the rivnut pliers, and that crimps it all the way up. But instead of breaking off, you just unscrew it, and so on the way out you also know you've got a decent thread. So yeah, without further ado, let's get some of these rivnuts. These are M4. I've got it set up. I've done a couple. I've made sure that I've got the right size drill and everything. And before we go ahead, let's just talk about right. So rivnut pliers then. There's your rivnut. There's your rivnut pliers. How do they work? So when you buy a set of rivnut pliers, these are from Sealy, not a sponsor, but feel free Sealy if you want to hit me up. Yeah, some chance. So you get a whole bunch of these fittings that come with it in the end of the rivnut plier itself. The rivnut pliers open up, which sort of pushes out, the thread on the end of it, and then as you pull it in, he says, failing miserably to focus, as you pull it in, it pulls the thread back, and because that's threaded into the rivnut, it compresses the rivnut. It pushes this section out. This is all slit around there, so it pushes it out, and you can actually see the rivnut. In fact, let me show you. Let me show you what it looks like when it's all compressed up. Alright, so let's show you how this thing works then. So when you buy a set of rivnut pliers, you get a whole bunch of these things, these adapters that come on the end of it, right? They screw out. Just try not to get his hand in the way. So they screw out. Each one has a different size thread on the end. Okay, that's used for everything. This section comes back like a sleeve, and then you screw this out. So the adapter you get is in two parts. The two parts fit together, they're the right size. So you have a threaded part, and you have a sort of sleeve or a thing for it to push up against them and crush against the rivnut. Rivnut screws on the end of there. Okay, so what happens is this part gets pulled out, this bit with the big nut on gets pulled out this way, but the thread is holding it this way, and so it's compressing it. Alright, sorry if you're already aware of this, but yeah, maybe there's some people out there don't know how rivnuts work, or rivnut pliers. And if that's you, then you're welcome, and if that's not you, then I apologise. Skip on, feel free. Alrighty, so let's screw this back together again, and I'll do one so that you can see what it looks like when it happens. Right, so what you do is you screw it all the way down with the handles open. Okay, and then as you drill a hole, you push the rivnut into the hole, you cramp it down. Okay, screw it down a bit further with there's a little handle at the back. Rivnut's being held in, of course, at this point by the panel. Cramp it down a bit more, and I think generally 3 times is sufficient. Okay, cramp it down a bit more, and then you can pull your rivnut off. So the thread stays good, which is amazing. So that's all the rivnuts in. Next job, got to drill out the holes that did have the self-tapper screws in them in the panel to accept the bolt, and then we'll probably put a little washer on around the outside to stop the bolt pulling through. I don't know, maybe enough, we'll have to see. Nonetheless, okay. Let's show you that. Got a nice panel with a bunch of holes in it, all 4mm. Let's go see if it fits on the gap. Okay, so our panel is all drilled out with 4mm drill bit for our 4mm bolts, which now go straight through. Perfect, that's exactly what you want. And over here, our rivnuts are in place, ready to accept the board. We know they're in the right place because basically I've just drilled out the holes from the self-tapping screws. So they should be just about in the perfect spot. So all that remains is for me to screw that in. Apologies for the different t-shirt today, if you've spotted that. I lost some footage yesterday, so I've had to redo this bit. This is why I'll never have a job in TV. Okay, think. Oh, we need life and light. And the last two. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's it. Job's done. We have a bunch of rivnuts in the panel. We have a bunch of bolts in there, which means it's just never going to come out again. It's never going to fail. It's way better than self-tapping screws. We do it right because we do it twice. But yeah, maybe that's the kind of thing that you could get a hold of, rivnuts. It's been really good for me. It's really good for fitting audio speakers in cars. It's great for fitting panels. It's awesome for fitting brackets up as long as stuff's not too heavy. You know, it's just a really great tool, right? So it's one of those things that I never had for the longest time. No excuse for me using self-tappers really, but it was something I needed to get done quick, and there we go. So do it poorly, do it twice. Anyway, so enough of me rambling. Let's show you the final product. This is it.